What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'll be taking you through my very own wildcard draft for the upcoming double game week 35. So yes, personally, I might not be on the wildcard chip, but don't worry, I'm going to create this video like I was and deliver the wildcard draft that I would choose if I was on the chip. Now if you guys know me well, you'll know that I always go over the fixtures with any draft, so I'll be covering those before we go over the actual team. But I am quite jealous of those of you on the wildcard chip. If you bench boost in game week 37, it's a very viable strategy. So if you guys want to see what wildcard draft I would go for, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. Now I always say the fixtures are the bread and butter of any kind of draft, whether it be the free at the wildcard. Always like to analyze the fixtures to make better decisions. Now if you guys are kind of wildcarding from game week 35, you obviously want the last 4 game weeks to be absolutely optimal, and therefore that probably means bench boosting in game week 37. Now right off the bat, even if you guys aren't using the bench boost chip in game week 37, I still feel like your approach will be quite similar, as you obviously want the best starting 11 in that double game week. So the teams I want to focus on are going to be the teams the doubles in game week 35 and teams the doubles in 37. Now there are a couple of single game week teams that you guys can also look at, but the majority of your draft will be made up of these 6 sides. So the teams I want to go over are Chelsea, Spurs, Man City, Brighton, Newcastle, and finally United. And I can probably bet that about 13 out of the 15 positions are going to be made up of these teams. So let's bring up those fixtures for double game week 35, game week 36, double game week 37, and final game week 38, and there's some really great fixtures from these sides. So the nice thing about 35 and 37 is the 2 double game week teams that are consistent are Chelsea and Spurs, and we'll speak about the triple up for both those teams. Now Man City, Brighton, Newcastle, and finally United only have a double game week in 37, but still some great fixtures before that. Now the first thing that I want you guys to actually avoid is going to be the final game week of the season. Game week 38 might be an absolutely massive one. Now yes, that's more of a medium-term fixture, can't exactly predict rotation, but for example with Spurs, they've got Sheffield United, a great fixture. Now you guys will see why I'm reminding you about Spurs and Sheffield United in game week 38, but just keep that in the back of your mind as we go through the video. But as you guys should, you should target the fixtures in front of us, and you can put some thought to the future. So let's talk about game week 35. So Chelsea Spurs, you're probably going to have a double up or a triple up of both these teams, and luckily enough, the rest of the sides have great fixtures as well. So we've got Nottingham Forest for Man City, we've got Bournemouth for Brighton, but Sheffield United at home for Newcastle is the one I want to focus on, and then maybe the United one, which is Burnley at home. So Newcastle for me are definitely a team that I would look at a triple up from, and the reason for that is in game week 35, Sheffield United already spoke about that, but in game week 36, it's Burnley away, so I'm expecting a lot of goals and clean sheets in both those games. Now another team to focus on is going to be Man City. We have had some injury concerns about Erling Haaland, for example, but with them out of the Champions League, I'm expecting Pep to play a strong team every single game week. So your Kevin De Bruyne's, your Phil Fodens, I'm pretty sure they will be nailed, but the defensive department might be quite hard to predict. Then the final team we're going to go over is Brighton. Unfortunately, they don't have the greatest fixtures in the world. The double game week from a defensive point of view isn't great either, but they're going to be there if you want some cheap assets. Now there are a few teams I mentioned, some single game week sides that you guys might also want to look at. The 2 that come to mind are Arsenal and Liverpool. They play in game week 34, Arsenal playing tonight against Chelsea, Liverpool playing tomorrow. But if both those sides do win their fixtures, that's going to be a massive title run-in. If there are some hiccups though, I do expect Arsenal and Liverpool to rotate as the season progresses, but if they don't, those assets could also be quite viable. But if I was to use the free hit in game week 35, I definitely would target these teams. So let's go on to the player selections. Now the way I'm going to go over this wildcard draft, I'm going to build it from scratch, so this might be quite all over the place, so I do apologize in advance. The reason I like this kind of format more than going kind of position by position is that it gives you more insight into how I create my teams. So the biggest thing to note on the right hand side is going to be the money in the bank, 1.0 million, so I've left $1 million in the bank for you guys if you have a different team value. So most FPL managers should be able to afford this draft. Now the position I'm going to start off with is going to be the most boring position. It's going to be the goalkeepers, and my combination is Petrovic and Onana. Now this will make more sense as I go through the rest of my team and my Chelsea triple up, but Petrovic to me is the only viable Chelsea defender. With Gusto's injury concerns, I'm a little bit worried that he's not going to be fit for the future game weeks, and that's the last thing you want to worry about in a double game week. So yes, Chelsea's defense hasn't been that great, but I do think Petrovic is a viable goalkeeper. Fingers crossed to get some saves this double game week. Then my second option is going to be Onana. We saw that United had some fairly decent fixtures, also a pretty nice double game week. But the reason I kind of have him here is that the rest of the teams I like, I've already kind of tripled up on them. But this spot, you guys can go your own way if you want to. If you'd rather go for Edison instead of a Man City outfielder, that's also a strategy I would look at. Now, since we've gone over our Chelsea defender, I want to go over the Spurs team now. So let's go over the triple up that I would look at. So the first player is a pretty obvious one. It's Heung-min Son. If Richarlison is still out injured, Son will be playing up front. And while my expectations aren't that high for him, I think you have to go for him on a wild card. Spurs and Chelsea have the most double game weeks in the next 3 fixtures, so you're kind of getting an extra fixture over other teams. And the reason my expectations aren't that high is obviously the North London derby is going to be coming up in game week 35, and Arsenal have pretty strong defense at the moment. But if there was a team to score against them, it's probably going to be Spurs, but that game could also be a comfortable Arsenal win. But I'm going to roll the dice here, as mentioned, extra fixtures coming up, and that's why Son's the no-brainer attacker. Now the second option, if fit, it's going to be Pedro Porro. Now I do say if he is fit because currently a doubt, but if he's fine for game week 35, I'd put him in as my defensive coverage. With the Dogi out injured, I think that Pedro Porro is the main man to go for, but probably was before the injury anyways. Now do I think Spurs keep a clean sheet in this game week? Probably not. I can honestly see Arsenal and Chelsea scoring. But Pedro Porro does share some set pieces, there might be some attacking threat there, and I think it's worth rolling the dice on a wild card. I'm actually going to triple up on the Spurs team, but I'm going to put the last player on the bench, and that's Van de Ven. Now you might be asking me, why am I bringing in a player with the double game week and then I'm benching them? Well, as mentioned, my expectations for that Spurs defense aren't too high. Now if you guys recall, I reminded you about game week 38. Well, in game week 37's doubles, Spurs have Burnley at home, and then in 38 they've got Sheffield United. So Van de Ven is here for a future move, as I would want him by game week 37 and 38 anyways. So yes, a little bit of a weird one. Obviously you guys can play him in the starting 11 if you want to, but I prefer the other defenders. So now that we've gone over our Spurs triple up, let's switch our attention back to Chelsea, and Cole Palmer is my captain and the second no-brainer. Now he might actually not feature tonight in that Arsenal game because he's sick, but I do expect him to recover by game week 35. Not much more has to be said about him. As you can see, got the Campsey armband on him as my favorite option, and I've gone for another attacker with Nicholas Jackson. Now, big kind of talking point is Nicholas Jackson is on 9 yellow cards. If he gets one tonight, he's going to be suspended. But from game week 35 onwards, the capacity's been increased to more yellow cards. So basically, if he doesn't get yellow carded tonight, he should be fine from now to the end of the season. But if he does, he's obviously suspended. Now, in terms of Nicholas Jackson, yes, might not be the best finisher in the world, might not be the best FPL asset. With double game weeks coming up, I'm willing to take the punt. Now, unfortunately, forward options are a little bit slim for game week 35's wildcard, and that's why Nicholas Jackson creeps in here as our third Chelsea option. Now, I actually believe because of those kind of slim options, the rest of our forward department is pretty nailed, the first player being Erling Haaland. Now, yes, there might be some injury concerns, but even if he's going to miss game week 35, I'd probably just have him on my bench for game week 36 onwards, as you could simply bench him. This wildcard draft has a pretty stacked bench, tons of options, and if Erling Haaland's back for the short term, I'd still bring him in. Now, if he is going to be out for the long term, that might raise some concerns, but I'd simply just change him to Alvarez. The rest of the team, even though we have the budget, I probably wouldn't make upgrades, and therefore the template's pretty set. Our final forward is also pretty set. It's Isaac against Sheffield United at home, Burnley next week, good double game week. There's no reason not to go for the Newcastle striker. I can personally vouch for Isaac. I've had him on my game week 30 wildcard, and he's got me quite a few points since. Now, I do like Isaac and Newcastle so much, I've actually got a triple up, starting off with Gordon in the midfield department. Now, I really like Gordon as a differential on your wildcard. If you guys have seen his home stats this season, they're absolutely ridiculous. I think he's only blanked once this season. Then you've got Sheffield United at home. He's not a better fixture at the moment. Newcastle beat them 8-0 when they faced them previously in the season. So Gordon's a no-brainer for me if I was to go for kind of a pick, but I've seen some wildcard drafts that actually haven't gone for him. Now, the last option has been made a no-brainer now because of the Trippier injury. If you guys haven't seen, Eddie Howe confirmed today that Trippier hasn't been training, and therefore I'd avoid him for my wildcard on game week 35. So Fabian Schär's the next best replacement, I guess. I do still like the clean sheet odds for Newcastle over these next few fixtures, and that's why he's a no-brainer. Now let's go and complete our midfield department, and the two options I'm looking at are United midfielder and a Man City midfielder, namely Bruno and Foden. Now at the current moment, I've got Bruno starting against Burnley at home, and therefore Foden's on the bench. Now as where you guys can see, if Erling Haaland does miss out, that's perfectly fine, Foden comes off the bench, but you guys might argue that Phil Foden against Forest is better than Bruno against Burnley. I just like Bruno, he's been pretty consistent recently, getting those assists and those goals, and obviously he's on penalties. Now the only worry is United's form at the current moment, they're not doing that great, but that doesn't mean that Bruno's a bad FPL asset. So this Manchester double up will complete our midfield department, and I do like the look of it. Now the last two positions are going to be pretty kind of hard to actually replace, like our forwards, the defenders are even worse. There's not many options I actually like. Now we'll go for a Man City defender though first, and that's Ruben Diaz, but you guys can go for simply anyone as there's going to be Pep roulette from now to the end of the season. My hope is that with our Champions League, Ruben Diaz is probably the main kind of option to go for in that back line, so fingers crossed there's no rotation. Now you guys know that Man City defense has great stats, but the clean sheets haven't really been there, but let's see if they close up the rest of the season. Then talking about kind of good defensive stats, our last defender, I've had to go for an Arsenal one. They're just simply too hard to ignore. Also added to that, I've already mentioned, there's not many kind of defenders at the moment to go for, and therefore Gabriel finds his way onto my bench. Now my plan for Gabriel is I would probably start him next week, and then maybe game week 38, but what you guys can do with those free transfers is replace him if you're going to bench boost. That kind of leads us to the first talking point I want to go over, is the question, would this team be different if I didn't bench boost? And the answer would probably be no. As mentioned, with the money, even if I was to do some upgrades, some downgrades, I probably would keep the starting 11 on the bench pretty similar, and therefore even if you guys aren't going to bench boost, I would probably still go for this team. What you guys can then do is your free transfers won't have to be used on getting a stronger bench, and therefore you can use them for the best starting 11 going to double game week 37. So pretty kind of sweet deal there if you guys aren't bench boosting, so this team kind of goes for both strategies. Now yes, this team might be pretty template, I personally think it kind of picks itself, but similarly to the kind of free hit in game week 34, if you move one or two players, it in turn changes the other triple ups. So you guys can add your own flavor to this draft, use this as a template, but as mentioned, pretty jealous of your game week 35 wildcarders. In the comments down below, post your wildcard drafts, are they different to my draft? I think most of the options will be pretty similar. If you like myself and aren't wildcarding, if you have any transfer plans or dilemmas, post them in the comments down below, or my Discord server where I'm slightly more active. I'll be going over my team selection as the kind of game week 34 fixtures do close out, so good luck to all you free hitters for this game week. This is basically a wrap for the video guys, hope you guys did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you have subscribed yet, and I will see you guys for the future videos, so make sure those notifications are turned on. For the time being, I'm signing off, it's been Dayvy FPL and I'm out, cheers, bye.